Hello and welcome back to our discussion on the financial statements. We wanted to understand the impact of decisions on the book value per share, and the book value per share is equity by number of shares. And we saw that these decisions, set up decisions, when they converted into financial statements with an assumption that the entire profit is retained, the book value per share is 1.77, which is equity divided by number of shares, and equity is equal to capital plus the retained profit. And the entire retained profit or the entire profit has been retained, so the book value per share has increased from 1 at the beginning to 1.77. Now let us use this number with different assumption with respect to the profit. Suppose we make an assumption that entire profit is distributed as cash dividend. With the same transaction, all that we assume is the entire profit is distributed. If profit is distributed, the dividend, which is the distribution of profit, is a cash outflow. Dividend is not an expense but is a distribution of profit. So as a result, the retained profit will become zero because entire profit has been distributed. Retained profit is equal to current profit minus dividend, and the current profit is 15,500 and the dividend is 15,400 and 15,000. So what is the effect of that? Distribution of dividend. If we don't distribute, the book value per share is 1.77, but if you distribute, the book value per share is 1, because the equity is equal to capital plus equity is equal to capital plus reserves, and the retained profit is PAT minus dividend. Since entire PAT has been distributed, so the retained profit is 0. Now we will change the way the dividend profit is distributed. Instead of saying that entire profit is distributed, if the language of the question is like this: the company has declared a cash dividend of 50%. Unless specifically mentioned, the rate of the dividend is always calculated on the face value of the capital. So the dividend to be distributed is 50% of the capital. It's not 50% of profit, but 50% of the capital. When I distribute 50% of the capital, the retained profit will be profit minus the dividend. So 15,400 minus 10,000. Now what happened to the book value per share? The book value per share has gone down from 1.77 to, when no dividend was declared, to 1.27 when I am declaring 50% of it. So distribution of dividend leads to reduction in the equity, and equity is reduced because the reduction of the retained profit. The retained profit is reduced because a part of the profit is distributed. So when a company distributes dividend, the book value, all other things remaining constant, the book value per share falls. Now let us assume that the cash dividend is not distributed, the same amount of 10,000, but distributed in the form of stock dividend. If the company is declaring stock dividend, distributes, in this case, unlike the previous one, there is no dividend in the income statement, in the cash flow statement, because we are not paying any cash. but the amount of dividend, which is 1:2, 1:2 means one share for every 2 shares. So that means at present the company is having 20,000 shares. Present there are 20,000 shares, okay, and you are giving 10,000 shares, and so therefore the total number of shares post dividend will be 30,000 shares. You see this? So the dividend distribution is equal to the declaration of dividend in the form of stock dividend reduces the retained profit from 15,400 minus 10,000, and the increase to the extent of 10,000 has happened in the capital. Let me show that once again. The stock dividend increases the capital and reduces the retained profit. But what happened to the book value? The book value per share here also has come down. In the case of cash dividend, the book value has come down because the equity has come down. Whereas in this case, the book value has come down because equity has not changed, but the number of shares have changed. So with dividend, we'll put that in this way: equity, number of shares, equity, number of shares, then number of shares, then book value per share. The book value per share is equal to the book value per share is equal to equity divided by number of shares. When no dividend our equity was when we are not distributing dividend, our equity was 35,400. The number of shares is 20,000 divided by 1. 20,000 divided by 1. So the number of shares is equal to, okay, number of shares is equal to 20,000. So the book value is equal to 1.77. When we are giving cash dividend, okay, when we are giving cash dividend 50%, the equity is equal to, when we are giving cash dividend 50%, equity has gone down, the number of shares is same, so the book value per share comes down to 1.27. When I am giving stock dividend in the same amount but generally mentioned in ratio, so the equity is equal to, when I am giving stock dividend, and number of shares is equal to 30,000, so the book value per share once again reduces. Okay, so we can summarize in this way that whenever a company declares dividend, the book value per share falls. If cash dividend, the fall is due to the fall in equity, no change in the number of shares. If it is stock dividend, the fall is due to the increase in the number of shares, no change in the equity. So it is always important to understand the impact of decisions on the book value per share, because we want to observe over a period of time the relationship between price and the book value per share. So we say that price depends on the book value per share. So therefore, managers try to manage the price by managing the book value per share. Thank you very much.